When we last watched the video, it said that he went back at the age of 55 to his home and was considered retirement. But he got a new calling in his life, and that was to go into politics. And it's kind of interesting because Andrew Jackson hated politicians. He didn't like the way politics ran this country. And then he turned out to be one, and actually one of the most interesting presidents we've ever had, because he was a lot like Donald Trump. He wasn't considered very presidential. And he said what he thought, and sometimes as Donald Trump tweets things that maybe people think are a little bit different, Andrew Jackson would simply just say them. Okay, so I think there was a lot of similarities of their personalities, although they're going to be at different beliefs.
I went to the Donald Trump rally this weekend.
In
The one
Bozeman?
in Bozeman.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, it was so fun. We had to stand in like 1,000 people line
Oh, yeah.
for hours. It was great though.
It's a little crazy. Okay, now, we're going to talk about Andrew Jackson, the political years. And we're going to talk about two really hard-fought political elections. One he's going to lose, and one he's going to win. And these are very important elections because we start talking about some new things that come about in our election process. So when we talk about Andrew Jackson, the political years, and the two hard-fought political elections, the first one we'll talk about is the election of 1824. And you're going to need to have these down and know the differences. So make sure you take good notes. I will repeat things several times to make sure you get this. Now, by 1824, Andrew Jackson had become a national hero for two reasons. Can anybody in here tell me what might be a reason by 1824 that he became a national hero? Give me one. Absolutely, the Battle of New Orleans and the perception that he had won the War of 1812 for the United States against the British. No question, that was one of the reasons he had become a national hero. What might be another reason that he became a national hero?
Oh, red sticks.
Yeah, his successful campaign against Native Americans in the United States, because Americans did not see Native Americans or Indians as equal. And so he put the Indians in their place, and will even do more when he gets elected president to put the Indians in their place, which is a sad, sad story that we know in American history as the Trail of Tears, which we'll talk about later. So he's a national hero at this point. And although he wasn't necessarily interested in running for president, many of his supporters and followers convinced him that he needed to do this. In a way, kind of like Donald Trump. Donald Trump wasn't really interested in running for the presidency, but I think people got behind him and he believed he might have a chance to do this when nobody else thought he did, and the next thing you know, he's elected president. So these guys have a similar story, but Jackson's going to be different than Trump in some manners that we'll pick out. Okay? Now, after some thought, he decided that he would run for the presidency in 1824. Now, what are the two political parties at this time? Help me out now.
Hold on, my mind's
Jefferson is a Republican, but what's the other party that's basically just fizzled out? Federalist. The Federalist Party basically is just fizzled out by this time. So because of the fact that the Federalist Party is out of commission, 4 Republicans are going to run for the presidency. 4 Republicans are going to run. And these names should be familiar, but we make sure you get them. Here are the 4 Republicans that decided that they would run for the presidency in 1824. First man was John Quincy Adams. These are on your ID sheet. John Quincy Adams decides that he's going to run, and he's from the state of Massachusetts. You didn't know these things or I wouldn't say it. So John Quincy Adams is your first Republican candidate for president in 1824 from Massachusetts. The second man we've talked about is William H. Crawford, and he's from Georgia. William H. Crawford from Georgia will be the second man to run for the presidency representing the Republican Party. So you have John Quincy Adams from Massachusetts and William H. Crawford. The next man is Henry Clay. Familiar name, we've talked about him before. He was from Kentucky. Henry Clay from Kentucky. And our last one will be obviously Andrew Jackson from Tennessee. So because the Federalist Party is out of commission, 4 men are going to run for the presidency in 1824, all representing the Republican Party. John Quincy Adams from Massachusetts, William H. Crawford from Georgia, Henry Clay from Kentucky, and Andrew Jackson from Tennessee. Now, remember, we have 2 different types of vote. Give me one type of vote, Donovan. What type of vote do we have in an election? Electoral, and when everybody's vote counts, that's called popular vote, right? Popular vote and electoral vote. Now, as in the election of 2018, who won the popular vote in that election? 2018.
Oh, it says an 18.
Who won the popular vote? Who did more people? Hillary Clinton by over 2 million. But the electoral vote's what counts. Okay, so keep that in mind. So here is the popular vote count in this particular election. Write these exact numbers down. William H. Crawford got 4th. He got the 4th amount of votes. He got 46,979. Yep, I'll say it many times. William H. Crawford came in last, so to speak, or 4th, with 46,979. Popular votes, yep. 46,979. William H. Crawford. The man that came in 3rd, surprisingly, was Henry Clay. Henry Clay comes in 3rd, and he has 47,217 popular votes. 47,217. Pretty close, but they got last and second to last.
Andrew Jackson going to be the most popular vote?
We're going to find out here, yeah.
I was just-
In 2nd place was John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams. And there was a big difference between 1st and 2nd and 3rd and 4th. Because John Quincy Adams had 114,023. 114,023. John Quincy Adams. 114,023. And the top vote getter in the popular vote was Andrew Jackson. And he got 152,901. 152,901. So we'll go over those again so you make sure you get them. William Crawford comes in 4th. 46,979 popular votes. Henry Clay comes in 3rd. 47,217. John Quincy Adams comes in 2nd. 114,023, and Andrew Jackson wins the popular vote of 152,901. Now, I don't know, people weren't interested in Clay or Crawford, but we're very interested. John Quincy Adams got a little thing there going. Well, hi, Ray, come on in. Whoops, sorry. So anyway, in the popular vote, who wins? But what we all know that popular vote in $1 will buy you a pop. Doesn't count. It's the electoral vote that counts. Now, in this election, you had to have 2/3 of the majority of electoral votes to win. When we have this many candidates, you have to have 2/3 majority. Well, the number of electoral votes that you had to have to win this election was 131. You had to have 131 electoral votes to win. That was 2/3 majority. Here is the electoral vote count per man. Okay? Electoral vote. In 4th place was Henry Clay with 37 electoral votes. He had 37 electoral votes. Henry Clay was 4th. 3rd place was William Crawford. So they kind of reversed positions from popular vote to electoral vote. And Crawford had 41 electoral votes. 41. He was 3rd, yep. William H. Crawford, 41. John Quincy Adams has 84 and finishes in second. John Quincy Adams has 84 and finishes in second. And Andrew Jackson wins the electoral vote with 99. So when we talk about electoral vote, Henry Clay fourth, 37. William H. Crawford third, 41. John Quincy Adams second with 84. And Andrew Jackson wins the electoral vote with 99.
That would make Adam vice president, right?
No, because they're still, I didn't go into all that detail because I just thought it was too much. No, they're on, they have people running with them, but I just didn't mention it. Yeah, 37 electoral votes for Clay, 31 for Crawford, or excuse me, 41 for Crawford, John Quincy Adams 84, Andrew Jackson 99. And Colt makes a good point. These guys all have vice presidents running with them. I just didn't muddy the waters, okay?
So you said that you have to have 100 and something votes to win president. So does that mean he doesn't get president?
That means he does not. Now, this is kind of an interesting story because we're going to have something happen here. What happened the last time? What happened when we had a tie in election? What happened? Remember we had the tie? They went to the House of Representatives. You remember when we had the tie between Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson? They both had 73. It went to the House. Alexander Hamilton used his influence in the House and talked the House into voting for Jefferson because he thought he was the lesser of two evils. Well, in this particular case, since no one got the 131 electoral votes needed, this is going to go to the House, and the House is going to decide.
Wait, wasn't he in the House too?
No, Jackson? Well, not now. He was in the old days. Yeah, but
they
no.
don't like him.
Well, we're going to get to that. Now, according to the Constitution at the time, the top 3 vote getters would go to the House to be considered for president. And any one of the 3 could win no matter what the electoral votes were because no one had gotten the 2/3 majority of 131. So who's out? Henry Clay. What does Henry Clay do that Alexander Hamilton did back in the other election? He goes and, well, yeah, he goes and talks to the House and says, you know, the guy you really want isn't Andrew Jackson, it's John Quincy Adams. And so Henry Clay, who has the same influence in the Republican House of Representatives that Alexander Hamilton had way back in the Federalist-controlled House of Representatives, goes and campaigns with all of his buddies and tells them, hey, when this vote goes to the House, will you please support John Quincy Adams? Well, when the House goes to vote, guess what? They listened. John Quincy Adams gets the most votes in the House of Representatives, and he becomes the nation's 6th president. Right here. Henry Clay, the guy that didn't get in because he had the least amount of votes, used his influence in the House to get John Quincy Adams elected. Now, just so you know, to answer Colt's question to a point, the man that will serve as vice president under John Quincy Adams will be one of the famous 3, John C. Calhoun. Okay, remember he was the Southerner? John C. Calhoun. We talked about Clay, Webster, and Calhoun. Calhoun will become vice president under John Quincy Adams. Oh boy. A little bit we've learned about Andrew Jackson. How do you think he took that? Oh, he was mad. Mad. Yeah.
So, like how Jackson used to call people out of duel to use office, could they do the same thing with Clay?
Oh, anybody could call anybody out for a duel, but this, you couldn't do it in a deal like this because you didn't get insulted. But, oh yeah, you could call anybody out in a duel anytime.
But that wouldn't make you president.
No, it wouldn't make you president. Now, Andrew Jackson was incredibly bitter about this loss. He thought he should have won, and in his mind, I had the most popular votes, and I had the most electoral votes. He thought that he was robbed. He wasn't a politician. He didn't give a rat's fanny about the Constitution and what it said. He felt robbed. You don't think Hillary Clinton, in a way, felt a little bit robbed in the last election? Man, I had 2 million, I mean, whether you like it or not, her feeling was, God, I got 2 million more electoral votes than Donald Trump and he still wins. People are a little, they're popular. People are a little bit bitter about that. And so he was very, very upset. What do you think made it worse? What made him madder? Matters? I don't know.
No.
What made him more mad? Guess who President John Quincy Adams picked as his Secretary of State? Henry Clay. And if you look at kind of how things have gone in a lot of these elections, who becomes the next president? The Secretary of State ends up getting elected. And Jackson's even madder. When he finds out that President John Quincy Adams appoints Henry Clay as the Secretary of State, he is livid. He is very upset. Because if you look at past his history, most of the men that served as a president's Secretary of State then had the opportunity to become president. That's just how it worked. And Jackson was on fire. He believed that President Adams had handpicked his successor to the presidency by choosing Clay as his Secretary of State, and Clay was the one that went to the House and pushed for John Quincy Adams. So what did Jackson call this whole thing? A corrupt bargain, which is on your ID sheet. He called this whole thing a corrupt bargain. That this was set up from the start, was not fair, he was cheated out of the presidency, and this man was on fire mad. He even referred to Henry Clay as the Judas of the West. Okay, who is Judas? Who did Judas deceive? Julius Caesar. Yeah. He was supposed to be one of Julius Caesar's friends, and he betrayed him, and it ended up in the assassination of Caesar. And Judas is a name for someone that isn't loyal to someone they should be. And so after this corrupt bargain, Andrew Jackson referred to Henry Clay as the Judas of the West. Now, that's going to take us to the election of 1828. And we're going to see what happens this time. The election of 1828. Now, I'll tell you what, Andrew Jackson was so mad about the election of 1824 that in 1825, he made it his life mission to win the presidency in 1828. So, I mean, this election was like in November. By January, he was totally in. This election's not going to happen for 4 more years. But I mean, he starts to win the presidency in 1825, like right after he loses. He commits his entire life to that. And he spends the next 3 years plus making a run for the presidency. Now, he's so mad at the Republican Party, what does he start referring himself as? Not a Republican, a Democratic Republican. So he's so mad at the Republican Party, he said, I'm a Democratic Republican, and Adams is a national Republican. I believe in democracy, so I'm going to call myself Andrew Jackson, not Republican, Andrew Jackson, Democratic Republican, and the guy in the White House can be the national Republican.
So didn't they the parties kind of switch the way from they are now compared to back then? When was that?
Well, it depends, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Okay, because what do we have now? Democrats and Republicans, right? Well, when Jackson referred himself as a Democratic Republican, what party did he establish? The Democratic Party. That's where it came from. We've talked about Federalists and we've talked about Republicans. Some of you might say, well, what about the Democrats? This is where the Democratic Party came about. Is when Jackson was so upset about his loss in 1824 that when he began his 3-year political battle for the presidency in 1825, he called himself a Democratic Republican, and he said you can refer to the president as a national Republican. Well, they don't refer to John Quincy Adams as a national Republican. He will continue to be a Republican, but when we get ready for the election of 1828, Jackson and his followers are going to be referred to as Democrats. Okay? Democrats. All right, well here, the election starts. Who does the Republican Party nominate? John Quincy Adams for re-election. And who are the Democrats going to nominate? Andrew Jackson. So now in this particular election, Federalists are long gone, and you have the Republicans and the Democrats.
Who are the,
What's that?
who's the vice president?
We won't even worry about that at this point. Okay, we're just going to concentrate on these guys. Okay, I'll tell you that later. But now, the Republicans ran a horribly dirty campaign against Jackson. Oh, they were awful. Okay, they got after the women in Jackson's life, and during the campaign, they called Jackson's wife Rachel an adulteress, and even worse, they called her a whore, publicly. Okay? So during this campaign, the Republicans were brutal. They referred to Rachel Donaldson, Jackson's wife, as not only an adulteress, but used the W word out loud against her. What's that? Not, well, I'll get to that. That wasn't enough. Remember his mother? I told you would come back later. Remember how rumor was how the mother got the boys out of the prison camp in the Revolutionary War? Remember I said keep that in mind? Well, they also referred to his mother as a prostitute and brought back the fact that the only way she got her boys out of that British prison camp was to sell herself, so to speak, for the boys' freedom. They were brutal. They called his wife horrible things, his mother horrible things. And you know, that took a toll on him. His wife's alive, mom's dead, right? But wife's got to listen to this all the time. And this is kind of your first example of what we know today as dirty politics in America. They just were horrible to Jackson's wife and his mother in her, even though she was dead. He even considered maybe not continuing the run, but